Heater versus Titus. Parties have been sworn in. You may be seated. Sir, have a seat.
Mr. Heater, the defendant used to be your girlfriend.
Yes.
And according to your complaint, she had you falsely arrested for domestic violence.
Correct.
Ms. Titus says that she did call the police. She had you arrested for domestic violence, and that's because you hit her. Correct?
Yes.
This incident happened on what date?
July 28th.
Now, Ms. Titus, I am correct that at one point in your relationship, you found yourself pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
And you told Mr. Heater that he was the father of this baby and that you miscarried. Is
Yes,
that what
ma'am.
happened? But it turned out that he was not the father of this child.
It could have not been his.
Right. And then you renewed your relationship again briefly. But that's all it takes, Mr. Heater. A brief moment of stupidity, and Miss Titus told you she was pregnant again. And according to you, you said, listen, I didn't know about last time, I don't know about this time. I don't want to have anything to do with this baby until I take a paternity test.
Actually, what I told her was that I would help her out as long as I would be repaid if the baby was not mine.
You didn't discuss that with me first. I would have told you that that was a very bad idea. However, on the evening of the 28th of July, according to you, called you and wanted to come over to talk.
Actually, he called me.
Yes.
What did you call her for?
I thought that she had a doctor's appointment regarding the baby the previous day, and I just called to see how it went.
And what did Miss Titus tell you?
She said that I was wrong about the date, that I believe it was the next day, and that she would like to come over and speak to me. And I said, I don't think that's a good idea. We speak face-to-face, that we should speak over the phone. And she said that she didn't want to speak over the phone.
So Mr. Heater told you not to come over.
Well,
You
no.
acknowledge that. He said he didn't want to talk to you in person.
He said that he didn't want to talk to me, but eventually said that it was okay for me to come over.
Did you tell her it was okay to
No,
come
I
over?
did not.
No, I don't believe that. It's not what you say in your answer, and I don't believe that. He said he didn't want to talk to you in person. He thought you should discuss whatever you had to discuss over the phone. But you went over there anyway. What time did you go over there?
About 12:30 in the afternoon.
What did you want to discuss with him?
I wanted to talk to him about the baby and about how things were going between us. We were, before this, we were going out and doing things together, and like...
Don't you people know anything about birth control?
Yes, they don't work for me.
They don't work for you?
Yes. My body rejects them.
There are all kinds of birth control, Ms. Titus.
Yes, ma'am.
The answer to having a problem with one form of birth control is not to have babies with people who don't want it or anybody else. So you went over there about 12:30.
I knocked at the door, and he told me to come in, and I upset him. And
How did you upset him?
I don't remember exactly what I said.
Maybe you
to
do.
him.
If you don't remember, maybe he does. What happened, Mr.
I
Heater?
was upset before she came into the house because I told her not to.
Come over.
And she started screaming through my door at me.
What was she saying?
You have to live up to your responsibilities. You can't create a situation and then not take care of it.
That doesn't sound welcoming, Miss Titus.
That never happened at
Go
all.
ahead.
So, to save myself from embarrassment from my neighbors, and I did open the door for her to try to...
So you let her in.
Yeah.
And what happened when she came inside?
It just continued on the same thing in there. You have to take care of this. And, you know, I was trying to tell her I'm doing the best I can with this. I don't really know how to deal with this situation. Everything's so bad. I don't know what to do except for what I am doing, and that wasn't good enough for her. And for 30 or 45 minutes, she followed me around my house with me telling her to leave over and over and over again. She would not leave my house. And eventually I was in the kitchen sorting my dishes, and she came in and was pointing her finger at me, yelling at me in there, telling me the same thing, that I had to deal with my responsibilities. At that point, I took her by the hand that she was pointing at me with and just turned her around, had hold of her elbows with my body pressed against her back, and was just walking her towards the door. I was like, you need to leave now. And she grabbed onto the kitchen doorway and started pressing back against me. And when I finally backed off of her and she let go of the door, she turned around and grabbed my hand like this, and then she smacked me in the face and said I had no right to touch her. And as a reaction, my hand came back around, too.
So you hit her?
Yeah, regrettably, I did come back around. She went off towards what I thought was the front door, but as I was in the kitchen, I heard her dialing my phone. She told me then that she called the police.
Do you have a copy of the police report?
Yes, I do.
I'd like to see it, please. Who is this gentleman, Mr. Heater?
This is my friend, Jason Hubbard.
Was he a witness to what happened on the 28th of July?
No, he wasn't.
Okay. Okay, Miss Titus, tell me what happened Your version of what happened when you got into the house.
When I came into the house, we sat down on the couch and started to talk. At first, things were okay. Then I started talking about the baby and about this new girl that he's dating and how that her not liking me around is the real reason why he's not wanting to have anything to do with the baby. Then he got upset and told me to leave, and I told him no, he can't just end the conversation anytime he wants.
Go ahead.
I followed him around the house and was still talking to him, and we ended up in the kitchen, and I had said something about this girl he's dating, his girlfriend, and he doesn't like me to refer to her as that, so that made him really upset. And he came and he grabbed me by my arms and started to escort me through the door. And I stopped myself, told him he didn't have any right to put his hands on me at all.
Yes, you did.
Not according to...
Oh, yes, you did. Once he tells you that he wants you to leave his house and you remain there, you're trespassing. That's a crime. Next.
Well, according to...
Don't tell me according to anybody. You tell according to a police officer? I've had 10 years of postgraduate legal education. When you're in somebody's house and you're an invited guest, first of all, you weren't an invited guest
But
in
I
this
was
house. I'm
invited.
speaking. You weren't an invited guest. You were told not to come. You came anyway. He tried to avoid you and said, please leave. Once he told you to leave his house and you refused, you become a trespasser.
One other reason
Now-
I didn't leave is because in previous arguments that we've had, he's asked me to leave, and then 10 minutes later, he'll call me and tell me come back over.
Well, you just have to guess his mood then. Right now, he told you to leave, and you didn't leave. So he put his hand, escort you out. And what did you do?
And I turned around, and he still had a hold of me when I smacked him in his face.
Right, so you smacked him in his face first.
Yes, ma'am.
And then he slapped you.
Twice.
Twice. You slapped him the first time, he slapped you twice. It's amazing to me that the police arrested you, sir. Absolutely amazing.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
You have no right to lie.
Ex-girlfriend Rebecca Titus had him falsely arrested for physically abusing her. Rebecca claims he kicked her in the stomach during her pregnancy.
Tried to get you out of the house. He's holding on to your arms. You're resisting him. Ultimately, you turn around. He's still pushing you, correct? And you slapped him. He slapped you then twice. Where did he slap you? In the face?
In the face.
And then he let go of you when you called the police. And you are there because you are pregnant,
Yes.
and you're concerned about the welfare of your baby.
Yes.
And that is the primary thing that you're concerned about, the welfare of your baby.
Yes.
So let me tell you what you told the police. Titus said that the defendant grabbed her by the arms and began to drag her out of his house, physically trying to remove her from the residence. She advised that she is pregnant on her stomach. Was that meant to get the police really angry at him? Pregnant? He pushed on your stomach? You're full of baloney. And you had no right to have him arrested. And I'm amazed that they arrested him. He has a right to escort you out of his house if you refuse to leave. You hit him first. Did you hire a lawyer?
No, I had a public defender.
One of the things that I have to comment on is you're not too swift. If you're dating this girl and she tells you she's pregnant and it turns out it could have been you or somebody else, I wouldn't have had a wind through my head and then had intimate relations with her again, unprotected. Do we understand each other?
Completely.
Ms. Titus, you have to learn that domestic violence is a very serious crime. Just because you're a woman doesn't mean that you have a right to hit somebody and not expect to be hit back. And you have no right to lie to the police, because it was a lie what you told the police that he pushed you in your stomach while you were pregnant. That's not what he did at all, because that's not what you told me happened. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $1,500. That's all.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
The $3,000 gown and the $200 hobbyist crumb when designer delusions meet the cold gavel of reality. The wedding industry is a curious, glitter-covered vortex where a lot the altar of the perfect day. We've all been there, scrolling through Pinterest at 2 in the morning, convinced that we can have it all. The artisanal flowers, the hand-beaded lace, and the 5-tier architectural masterpiece of a cake, all for the price of a casual brunch. But what happens when that dream hits the hard floor of reality? In this episode of Judicial Brilliance, we witness a collision of epic proportions that I like to call the designer dilemma. It's a case that feels like a scripted satire of modern entitlement, yet it's as real as the frosting on a burnt cupcake. At the center of the storm is Alicia Sanders, a bride who spared no expense on herself, flaunting a $3,000 designer dress, but decided that the friend discount was the best way to handle her wedding cake. On the other side is Katherine Nybert, the quintessential hobbyist baker who fell into the classic trap of trying to turn a gift of love into a high-stakes professional duplicate. This episode is a masterpiece of social commentary because it highlights the toxic intersection of friendship and exposure culture. It's about that specific brand of audacity where a person values their own image at thousands of dollars but expects the labor of their friends to be essentially free. As a critic, I found myself oscillating between a deep weapon against her and a sharp, cynical amusement at the bride's defense. Why is this episode so sharp and essential? Because it exposes the copycat culture we live in. We want the aesthetic without the invoice. Alicia didn't want a cake. She wanted a status symbol she couldn't afford. The way this drama unfolds in the courtroom, with photos of designer gowns being used as evidence of absolutely nothing relevant, is pure comedy gold. It's a study in the human psyche, how we justify our own pettiness by claiming our vision was ruined. This isn't just a dispute over $200. It's a forensic examination of a friendship's death certificate, signed in buttercream and delivered with a side of sharp judicial wit. If you've ever been the friend who did a favor only to have it thrown back in your face, or if you've ever been the person trying to save a buck at someone else's expense, this episode will make you squirm in the best way possible. It's a reminder that gratitude is often the first thing to be totaled when expectations exceed reality, making this case an absolute must-watch for anyone who enjoys seeing the bubble of entitlement burst under the weight of a judge's gavel. The opening act of this sugary courtroom drama, which I've titled The Pinterest Trap and the $3,000 Lace, begins with the entrance of Katherine Nybert, far bigger than her legal sense. Katherine isn't a professional baker. She's a gift of love hobbyist who thought that making a wedding cake for a friend at the mere cost of ingredients was a beautiful way to celebrate a union. Little did she know she was walking into a trap set by Alicia Sanders, a bride with a designer appetite and a clearance rack budget. The conflict is established with the sharp clarity of a fresh lemon tart. Katherine provided the cake, Alicia provided the complaints, and the $200 for ingredients remained locked in Alicia's wallet. Alicia's opening move is a classic distraction. She shows up with photos of her designer wedding gown, apparently believing that if she looked like $3,000, the rules of contract law simply wouldn't apply to her. It's a fascinating opening that sets the stage for a battle between the labor of love and the entitlement of the perfect day. Then we spiral into the second act, which can only be described as the Great Hunger and the $1,000 Miracle. This is where the chaos reaches a fever pitch of mathematical absurdity. Under the piercing gaze of Judge Judy, Alicia admits she had 400 guests. 400! To feed this army, she claims she spent a grand total of $1,000 on food. My fellow critics, let's guess. Unless the buffet consisted of a single chicken nugget and a half cup of lukewarm tap water per person, the Han Lone of this wedding's logistics is mind-boggling. Alicia insists that her mother and family cut expenses by making the food themselves, but let's be real, even the most budget-conscious family can't defy the laws of economics. This revelation shifts the entire energy of the room. We realize we aren't dealing with a high-end wedding ruined by a cake, but a high-stress, low-budget production where the bride spent all her money on herself and left her friends to pick up the slack. The chaos intensifies as Alicia tries to use her designer dress as a shield against paying for the cake, claiming it didn't look like the picture. Judge Judy's reaction is the ultimate vibe check, reminding the bride that a copy isn't an original. The tension in the room is palpable as the disaster cake is revealed not to be a puddle of mush, but a centerpiece that was very much present and accounted for. Finally, we reach the third act, the fingered frosting finale, and the gavel of truth. This is the moment where the bride's defense completely collapses under the weight of photographic evidence. Alicia claims the cake was so terrible that nobody wanted to eat it, Yet the photos show a crowd of flower girls found the holy grail of sugar. The final curtain drops when Judy delivers the ultimate legal blow. If you display the cake, if you let the kids eat the cake, and if it's the only cake you have, you are using the cake. And if you use it, you pay for it. The drama ends not with a designer flourish, but with a $200 judgment and a bride who finally learns that good luck to you from Judge Judy is the most terrifying wedding gift one can receive. Let's talk about the absolute drama and character chemistry that makes this episode a psychological thriller disguised as a small claims case. When we analyze Alicia Sanders, we are witnessing the final boss of the Pinterest bride archetype. Alicia is a customer service representative, which makes her refusal to pay for a service all the more ironic. She knows exactly how the customer is always right. Mantra can be weaponized, and she's wielding it like a designer handbag. Her primary character trait is a blinding level of entitlement that is physically represented by her $3,000 gown. In her mind, the dress isn't just clothing. It's a social contract that demands the rest of the world rise to her aesthetic level without her having to pay for the elevation. When she looks at Judge Judy and proudly states she spent $3,000 on a dress, but wouldn't spend, admitting that she values her own reflection more than the survival of her guests or the labor of her friends. Her body language is a study in defensive elegance. She stands tall. She speaks about designer labels with a reverence usually reserved for holy relics, and yet she's arguing over a $200 ingredient bill. The chemistry between her and the court is one of pure friction. She doesn't just disagree with the plaintiff. She feels insulted that a hobbyist would dare to present her with anything less than a professional masterpiece. She is the nan of her own delusion, a victim of the gap between her aspirations and her bank account. Her interactions with Judge Judy are particularly delicious because she tries to use her status as a first-time bride, ignoring the 3-month Vegas stint, to garner sympathy, but Judy is immune to the bridal glow defense. On the other side of the aisle, we have Catherine Nybert, who is the reluctant martyr of the creative world. Catherine represents every person who has ever said yes to a friend's project out of the goodness of their heart, only to realize that no good deed goes unpunished. Her chemistry with Alicia is that of a shattered friendship. You can see the exhaustion in her eyes. She isn't there for the money as much as she is there for the principle. And the hard way that when you mix business with friendship, you lose both. She's the person who discharges them cost because she cares, making her the perfect foil to Alicia's "I want it all for nothing" attitude. The most fascinating drama isn't even the cake itself, but the mathematical horror story of the 400 guests and the $1,000 food budget. This detail reads Alicia's character better than any testimony could. If you are willing to feed 400 people on a $2.50 budget, you are the judge scooting at Pinsett. Bạn đang chơi hệ thách thức giới hạn chịu đựng của dạ dày con người. This reveals a person who views her wedding as a stage production where the guests are just extras who should be grateful for the privilege of seeing her in a designer dress. The chemistry of the wedding party is hinted at through the photos of the flower girls. These little girls, described by Judy as not looking as if they're still with us, a classic Judaism for totally zoned out or messy, are the silent witnesses to the cake's actual utility. While Alicia claims the cake was a disaster, the girls are treating it like a sandbox of sugar, proving that the cake was not only edible but enticing. The most underrated character in this entire drama is the husband, who makes a cameo through Alicia's own quote. Alicia studied their entire dynamic. Even the man she just married realized that her crusade against the hobbyist baker was a bridge too far. He is the voice of reason echoing from the background, a man who likely just wanted a piece of cake and a quiet night, but ended up as a footnote in a televised legal beatdown. The interaction between Alicia's desire for a designer life and her refusal to pay designer prices creates a narrative arc that is both hilarious and deeply frustrating. She is the personification of the exposure economy, where artists are expected to work for free because the prestige of the event should be enough. Judge Judy's reading of Alicia is surgical. She sees through the dress, through the copy versus original excuses, and lands directly on the fact that Alicia used her friend. The drama peaks when Alicia tries to claim the cake ruined her wedding, yet Judy points out that she displayed it. She used it as a backdrop for her photos, and she let her guests, or at least the kids, consume it. In the world of Judge Judy, using is paying, and Alicia's attempt to claim the product was useless, while simultaneously using it as the centerpiece of her reception is a contradiction that no amount of designer lace can cover up. This is a story of a friendship that died over a $200 grocery bill, and a bride who finally realized that in the court of law, your dress doesn't give you a discount on your character.
Gemini đã nói.
When we pull back the velvet curtain to examine the bon te dao dying behind this frosted legal drama, we see a production team that knows exactly how to marinate a narrative in the juices of bridal hypocrisy for maximum viewer satisfaction. The way this segment is edited is nothing short of a psychological operation designed to make us fall in love with a hobbyist baker while sharpening our pitchforks for the designer-clad bride. Let's start with the visual storytelling. The decision to let Alicia Sanders present her wedding photos, specifically the ones highlighting her $3,000 dress, wasn't just a legal necessity for the defense, it was a deliberate directorial trap. The camera doesn't just show the photos. It lingers on the intricate lace and the designer silhouette with a lingering, almost ironic slow-motion zoom that screams, "Look at where all the money went." This visual choice creates a jarring, hilarious contrast when the show cuts back to the grainy, close-up shot of the fingered frosting on the cake. The hatsan, or perhaps the hat duong in this case, is how the production team perfectly timed the reveal of the 400 guests versus $1,000 food math. In the world of reality, the editor Chen Huang am ton of the judge's sharp questions, the rapid fire, how much? How many? With a rhythmic pacing that mimics a heartbeat rising. It's a masterclass in building tension before the punchline of $2.50 per person hits the audience like a wet sponge. The Mui Don Dung here is subtle. While the dispute is undoubtedly real, the way the litigants are positioned feels like they were coached to lean into their most extreme archetypes. Alicia is framed in every shot as the queen of entitlement, with the camera often catching her subtle eye rolls or the way she adjusts her posture when talking about her designer status. Meanwhile, Catherine is filmed from angles that make her look smaller, more relatable, and more exhausted friend. Is the script natural? Yes, but the pacing is clearly manipulated to highlight the VO nature of Alicia's defense. The most brilliant directorial move was the inclusion of the flower girl photo. The production could have just had them talk about the cake, but showing the visual evidence of children actively using and enjoying the product while the bride claims it was a disaster is the ultimate gotcha moment that only a seasoned TV editor could orchestrate. The use of the sharp clack of the gavel isn't just a transition, it's designer delusion. The slow-motion reactions of the audience members in the background, those perfectly timed gasps and "did she really just say that?" looks add a layer of social validation that tells the viewer exactly how to feel. It's a highly polished piece of reality that uses the bride's own vanity as the weapon to dismantle her credibility. The director didn't need to write a script for this. They just needed to give Alicia enough rope, or in this case, enough $3,000 lace, to hang her own argument. The framing of the designer versus copycat narrative is a stroke of genius that taps into our collective frustration with the influencer culture of 2026, where the appearance of luxury is valued far above the substance of character or the value of a friend's labor. By focusing on the designer gown as a character in its own right, the production transforms a simple contract dispute into a morality play about the true cost of vanity, making the final "good luck to you" from the judge feel like the series finale of a friendship that was always more about the wedding than the marriage. Looking at the cultural landscape of 2026, where budget-core and DIY aesthetics often collide with high-end influencer expectations, this episode serves as a brutal but necessary lesson in the economics of gratitude. We are currently living in an era where social media has convinced everyone they deserve a designer life on a dupe budget, but as Alicia Sanders found out, you can't aesthetic edit your way out of a legal contract. The most profound cultural takeaway here is the absolute cheapening of craft. We've become a society that values the look of a $3,000 dress more than the labor of a friend's 2-day baking project. Alicia's decision to spend $3,000 on herself while trying to feed 400 people for $1,000 is the ultimate modern metaphor for main character syndrome. It reveals a deep-seated cultural trend where the wedding guests and the vendors, especially the hobbyist friends, are viewed merely as props in the bride's personal fashion shoot. The lesson for the Gen Z and Gen Alpha viewers watching this in 2026 is simple but biting. If you want a designer product, pay a designer price. Otherwise, don't complain when your copy doesn't come with a professional warranty. There is also a significant lesson here about the invisible labor of women. Katherine Nyberg offered a gift of love, but in our current transaction-heavy culture, love is often mistranslated as free labor that I can criticize with zero consequences. The $2.50 per person meal is perhaps a mathematical miracle that suggests the bride was more interested in the illusion of a grand event than the actual comfort of her guests. The meaningful message buried under all that frosting is that your character is visible in the way you treat those who try to help you. In a world obsessed with unboxing and reviews, Alicia tried to one-star a friendship, and Judge Judy was the ultimate community moderator who deleted her account. The trend of wedding hacks has gone too far when it involves exploiting your colleagues for ingredients, and this case stands as a warning. The perfect day isn't worth a permanent stain on your reputation. We need to move back to a culture where a gift is treated as a gift and a product is treated as a purchase. If you're going to display it, let the kids poke it and use it as the backdrop for your designer-clad memories, then have the dignity to pay for the flour and eggs. The real lesson isn't about the cake at all. It's that you can't hide a copycat character under a $3,000 original gown, because eventually the truth will crumble, and unlike a wedding cake, you can't just fix a broken reputation with more frosting. To wrap this sugary disaster of a case into a final, digestible crumb, we have to acknowledge that the real judgment here wasn't just the $200, it was the public exposure of a cafe on a shoestring budget. Alicia Sanders walked into that courtroom thinking her designer gown was a suit of armor that would protect her from the consequences of her own stinginess, but she walked out with a good luck to you kiss of death from the bench, a phrase that, in Judge Judy's vocabulary, essentially means, I hope your husband has a strong stomach because he's going to need it. It's the ultimate irony of the modern age. We are so obsessed with the aesthetic of the event that we completely forget the ethics of the people involved. Katherine Nyberg might have lost a friend, but she gained a very expensive lesson in the value of her own time and talent. She learned that gifts of love should only be given to people who actually have the capacity to love you back, or at least the decency to pay for the flour and eggs. The image of those flower girls with their fingers in the cake will forever be the smoking gun of this trial, a visual testament to the fact that you can't claim a product is garbage while simultaneously serving it as the centerpiece of your celebration. This case is a stark warning to all the Pinterest planners out there. If you want a designer dream, don't try to build it on the backs of your friends' unpaid labor, because once the frosting is licked off and the guests go home hungry, all that's left is the cold, hard truth of a bill you're too proud to pay but too guilty to ignore. In the end, and her $200 judgment, but she lost something much more expensive, her reputation as a person who values people over props. And as for the husband who told her to stop? My friend, if you're out there, we hope you kept the receipt for the wedding, because after this televised takedown, the honeymoon phase probably ended before the first commercial break. Stay sharp, stay honest, and for heaven's sake, if you're going to feed 400 people, maybe buy an extra tray of chicken wings before you spring for the designer lace. This is your favorite critic, closing the book on the cake that ruined a wedding but saved our afternoon with its sheer, unadulterated drama. Court is adjourned.